And a very good morning to you. We're live in London and you're with Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Coming up today, my guests will share their views on the week's biggest stories. I've got the writer-at-large for the Nightly Australia, Latika Bourke, and Yossi Mekelberg, Senior Consulting Fellow at Chatham House, to help us out with the news. Good morning, Latika. What have you spotted?
Good morning, Emma. Glued to these updates of European and Ukrainian security advisors rushing to the UK for last-minute talks with US Vice President J.D. Vance ahead of President Putin and President Trump's meeting in Alaska.
Thank you for that. Yossi, you've had a busy week.
A very busy week indeed. And when I'm busy, it means the world is not in a great shape. And I found that Benjamin Netanyahu's, not surprisingly, his new idea of occupation tearing apart the Israeli Defense Force. David Lammy and Vice President Vance are fishing for peace, and Seoul convenience stores are fighting loneliness.
We'll be heading to Singapore to hear from our correspondent there as well. The city-state is celebrating 60 years of independence.
I'm Joseph Cole, and I will be bringing you the latest from Singapore's 60th anniversary celebrations.
And we'll be hearing from our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, who's in Tyrol. It's the 10th of August, 2025. Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday with Emma Nelson.
Good morning, everybody. How is everyone this morning? It's that sort of, there's a midsummer, mid-August feeling here in London where the city has really taken on, I find, a sort of a delicious mantle at the moment. Dare I say it, everyone's on holiday. London is ours is our playground. Is anyone else feeling that? Yossi?
Yes, so I was surprised that on the underground it was quite busy so early in the morning, but it means people were we are going out and enjoy London. I have to mention that yesterday the championship started, so it was the first game of the season. It was nice to basking in the sun while watching a game. Indeed,
although no one quite understands the point of football around this table. I don't know, are you a football fan, Latika?
Definitely not.
Sorry, Yossi.
I have X amount of bandwidth in my brain and unfortunately there's no room for the football. I do like some sports, but wait, are we talking round ball or are we talking like rugby?
No, we're talking proper British English football.
Oh, yes, I do like that football, but again, it whittles down to international because I just don't have time to keep up with the Champions League or the Premier League.
I love that. I don't have the round ball.
Yeah, because in Australia you say football and there's 3 different versions before you even get to actual football, which they call soccer. So
you can't even decide about the shape of the
It's an important distinction that one has to make.
But nothing that troubles your mind. What's been preoccupying you this week, Latika? Have you been doing anything more different kinds of fun in the sunshine?
Well, I have to say, I think it's a bit crazy that all you Brits desert London in August because it's one of the loveliest months. July is all sweltering and hot and humid and busy, and you're cramming into small spaces for these summer parties. August is an absolute treat. The weather just dips slightly. I was walking for about 4 hours last night around London with a friend from overseas, and the weather was just divine. The perfect way to go see Tower Bridge, St Paul's, Tower of London, all lit up looking glorious. It was just beautiful. So I really recommend staying in London in August.
Don't tell anyone.
It's a good feeling to feel tourist in your own city.
Yes.
It's kind of, you explore new places while walking in city that you live for a long time.
Yeah, I feel that will always be the case if you live in London.
Yeah,
you'll turn around and there'll be something you just think, I haven't visited.
Oh, yes. Well, so did you know there's a pop-up tennis court next to St Paul's Cathedral at the moment?
Brilliant.
Yeah, so these are the things you discover. And I thought, you think you know the spot in London and then you walk back around a couple of months later and you go, that's something new.
And what is the risk of you smashing one of the cathedral's windows accidentally by a lobbed tennis ball?
This bit I could not understand because there's steel nets around the entire perimeter, which of course makes sense. But then there are huge gaping entrances on each side for people to walk in and out of the court with seemingly no way to stop the balls escaping. So, Emma, it's a very good question. One I have not the answer for. I shall pray to find the right result, I think.
Let's head to Tyrol now to hear from our editorial director, Tyler Brûlé. A very good morning to you, Tyler.
Good morning, buongiorno.
Where are you? What is your view?
Well, my view, I'm in Lana. I'm in the gardens of the Villa Arnica, which is a property which you've covered many times. I think I've spoken to you from these very gardens, maybe on other programs, certainly in years past. And just an absolutely gorgeous day looking up towards Vigilius, Emma. You remember that was the very sort of fine perch that we had many, many years ago. I think it's over a decade ago, maybe, that we broadcast from the top of the mountain. I'm actually looking at the refitted cable car that now takes you up to the top. But I can remember eating speck and drinking a very, very nice Weissburgunder with you up there all of those summers ago.
There were happy days indeed. And the glorious thing about Vigilius, I think, for people who don't know and haven't been, is that the cable car is absolutely key to getting there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think it must be another 700 meters above where we are right now. But it's one of those cloudless days in South Tyrol. I mean, a very, very sort of gentle, like 2% haze. It's going to be rather toasty. It was about 37 degrees here yesterday. But the pool was perfect, and the setting was fantastic. And there's always a bit of shade, so it was absolutely delightful.
Tell me a little bit more about the attraction of this as this patch of the planet. The fact is that, we were there 10 years ago. You're still going back. You've seen a fair amount of the world. What is it where's the magnet for South Tyrol?
I think you know the answer, but it's good that you try to draw this out, because there is something incredible about it. Many years ago, actually, on that very trip, Em, I think we went to take a peek at a villa I ended up buying. We spent 6 years, of course, living here and being part of, part of the magic of the place. And that's the interesting thing. I think when you sell something, you think, okay, is that a chapter closed? Do you return? But we're drawn back at least once a year. We still have an outpost. Monocle still has a wonderful shop here run by the lovely Linda Egger. And I guess it's a couple of things. I think it's the collision of cultures which makes it interesting, because you have to sort of pinch yourself in, because I'm just looking at the parking lot right now for the hotel. All of the license plates are from German-speaking countries. I see 5 or 6 cars from Germany. There's one Austrian plate. There are Swiss plates. There's not an eye on the license plate on any car sort of in sight, which is interesting. And yet, of course, here we are in northern Italy, this sort of collision of languages and the sense of it's neither sort of Germanic, it's neither Italian. It's Tyrol. It is their own concoction with great wine and endless amounts of apples and handicrafts and a real sense of hospitality. I know that people like to talk about authenticity and experience today, blah, blah, blah. But this is the real deal. There's very few chain hotels here, if any. So you have just generations of families who've been running and improving and modernizing what it means to host people. And what more could you ask for at this time of year, any time of year?
These little places are getting increasingly difficult to locate, aren't they? I mean, we talk so much about the fact that people can travel and there's over tourism and this, that and the other. But, when you have somewhere like Austria or where you have somewhere like Italy, which depends so ferociously on making sure that they get their tourism right, to have a successful place which doesn't give you 1,000 QR codes when you try and sit down, or doesn't, no one is sitting and looking at their mobile phones when they're having lunch. I mean, there is a sort of, dare I say, a touch of nostalgia to this, which, dare I say, 10 years ago, that would have been perfectly normal. But we're losing that a bit, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is a sense that people have been doing it right here for a very long time. Why upset it? But at the same time, I think and this sort of speaks to where we're staying at the moment, at the Villa Arnica. They also have a lovely hotel next door called the Schwarzschmied. Then over in Bolzano, they have the Park Hotel Mondschein. And this is a family who, of course, have been in this game for a while. But you have 2 brothers who are just constantly pushing it forward, but they're doing so without having to rely on technology. They're doing it with great print. I mean, one of the amazing things when you come to Villa Arnica, it's just you feel like that they're almost running a news distribution business, because there are so many magazines from publishers all over the world. So you never even have to go to a kiosk. And I mean, even this is, of course, we have our show, The Stack. It's our business to know what's happening in publishing. But even here, I'm exposed to titles I've never seen before, which is just really magical. And of course, it speaks to a certain type of guest as well. It's probably not for everybody. There are no TVs in the rooms. Of course, the Wi-Fi works, but there's sort of a gentle, easy approach. But you sort of have to get the codes, I would say, to stay here as well. And that's a good thing, because I'm probably sort of the person speaking the loudest within probably a couple hundred meters,
which is not allowed in hotels, Tyler.
Well, yeah, and this is the wonderful thing. It's like there's everybody. I'm trying to be a bit quieter now, but the wonderful thing is everyone understands how to behave. I mean, I think in maybe the 10 times I've stayed here, there's been sort of one group of loudmouths from North America, and they were sort of quickly shown to the hiking path.
Excellent. Now, you've sent me a picture. This is tricky because you've sent me a picture that we have to talk about on the radio. And it's of, I don't know how many magazines on a magazine stand. It's, if you like a picture of Prince Harry, Prince Harry, if you like a picture of Mrs. Trump, and also, quite a few. You basically sent me a wall of women's magazines, all with bright yellow typeface on them.
Well, this is sort of the wonders of Germany. Of course, we talk about red tops in the UK, but they've got yellow tops in Germany. And this is the world of the Women's Weekly. And I went into a newsstand around the corner, and these are not the magazines that you find at the hotel. But maybe people are sort of reading them between the pages of something which is a bit more esoteric. But anyway, there's a newsstand around the corner from the Villa Arnica. And I went in them, and that's why I had to send you this photograph, because I didn't even know this many women's weekly titles existed in German. And you mentioned, of course, there's Prince Harry, but God, this is the territory of various German lesser royals, Liechtenstein royalty, former Habsburgs, etc., who fill these pages. And then not to mention, of course, lots of celebrities off of RTL and Sat.1 and lots of German TV channels and ORF and Schweizer Fernsehen and everything else. But yeah, how can you sort of recut basically the same magazine 75 different ways, because they're basically all the same thing. But it was also just magic. It was magical to see yesterday because the weather's beautiful. Everyone is up in the mountains. They're taking time by swimming pools, etc. And there was just a crush of people. They're buying whether they might be buying their Frankfurter Allgemeine or their copy of the Dolomiten or whatever the newspapers, and also stacking up on 2 or 3 of these titles as well. So again, going back to maybe a gentler time, no QR codes, no one maybe reading their media off the phone. Why would you want to read your media off the phone when you can just have sort of a wonderful magazine with a great yellow and red masthead?
It's amazing, and the names are gorgeous. There's Tina, there's Birgitta, there's Baby, there's Total Freiheit, which I think is like total freedom. Is it Freizeit or Freiheit? Freizeit Total off duty. And then there's Playboy, and they haven't bothered to cover up the things.
Oh no, God, no! It's all there for the world to see as well. I mean, that was sort of that just sort of snuck in on the right side of the frame. We were trying to focus more on the Women's Weekly titles. But anyway, the newsstand, at least in this part of the world, alive, well, and plenty of customers.
And also, you have thoughts on the temperature of a swimming pool as well, which is clearly one of life's essentials in mid-August.
Well, it is. I never understand swimming pools that are that are just warm. I mean, what is the point when the mercury is 35 degrees? Why do you want to go into a pool which is above 30 as well? Just the idea of having a pool should be bracing, and and maybe it also should be you do want to be able to linger in it a little bit, but I think also not too long, because I hate people who sort of sort of treat that as sort of, another sort of, perch beyond their sun lounge that they just sort of park themselves. I think also a good pool, you go for a swim, you cool it off, you get out. You don't have to sort of bring the bar to the edge of the pool, unless, of course, it's your own pool, you can do what you want.
To what point are we actually now going to consider putting signs up by swimming pools for the purpose of, to define their purpose?
Well, again, I come back to hotels with good social capital. You just have sort of the right guests and guests who can sort of, maybe throw the right glance, and then people start to get it very quickly. There is one interesting story, though, I want to, and this is maybe just to open up the conversation. Latika, Yossi, I'm not sure if you've seen this. But this is in Les Echos. It appeared on Friday, and it's talking about legislation in France where they're moving towards, or at least there's a motion to, of course, bring some type of legislation that is going to forbid hotels from forbidding children. And I think that this
is a sacrilege. It's an outrage and a crime against travelling.
It is, isn't it? And this is the magic of
That's the answer you were hoping for, Tyler, wasn't it?
This is the magic of this place where I am right now. No children allowed. The sister hotel next door, you can go wild around the pool as much as you want. You can bring all the kids that you have from various partners, go to town, go crazy. But you cross the little brook and the pass, and then you come through the special gate, and there are no children. And I don't know what they're thinking in France, but I hope this does not sort of get hold in the EU. But and again, opportunity for countries that are not going to pass as well. If this is what the French want to do, great. I think they will see one of the world's most visited countries. People are going to look elsewhere.
It's an incredible thing, and dare I say it, if I were in Germany, Mummy needs all that time to read all those women's weeklies, doesn't she, by the pool? She can't, and Daddy needs to read his Playboy. I mean, there's no time. There's no time for children in Germany and Austria.
I would also add that of all the people I know who relish saying to me, "We're going to a kids-free resort," it's my friends with kids.
Oh yes.
They love it.
Oh yes.
But you see, when my daughter was younger, we always looked for a place with children. Now that she's out of the house and we have a dog, now we look for hotels that allow dogs.
Yes,
and I don't think there is legislation.
No, that's an interesting point that's being raised here, Tyler. Is that are we not allowed to ban dogs as well? I know you might want to ban cats, but dogs, no.
No, and this is interesting as well because there's many corners of the world. I think about North America where you really don't see. Yeah, dogs are not allowed in restaurants. Dogs aren't really allowed in hotels, etc. I couldn't imagine that would ever happen in Switzerland or this part of the world where dogs are very welcome in restaurants, and you can bring your dog to the hotel, not a problem. Children, another conversation.
Different. Well, I wonder whether this is a wider conversation about the standards of behaviour. If you have a Swiss dog or a Swiss child, chances are it might sit still. So whether this is a sort of a more geographically specific issue that might need to be considered, Tyler, that a Swiss dog, fine in any restaurant. Large American dog, I'm not sure. Yossi, you travel a lot with dogs.
Swiss dogs have to go to school for 12 years as well.
Yes, of course.
And get a parentalship at the end.
Oh yeah, they're all going off to work in hotels. It's the same with kids. If you can get them reasonably well marshalled, actually the best way of having a hotel that looks after children is you put them in the club. So you put them somewhere else out of sight under the guise of them having a super time. So there are always ways and means to sort of work this one out. Put them in a separate building, Tyler. What would you think about that?
Well, listen, I'm all for the kids club, and that's fine, and I think that's a good hotel. No, should do. But I listen. There is something about the beauty of silence, and people not doing cannonballs in the pool, and I think you should be able to pay for that. You should be able to opt into that world, and then there are plenty of other places which do welcome children as well. Because I think that where does this go next? Then, I mean, going back to the covers of Playboy, I mean, is France then going to say, look at kids should be able to go to strip clubs and Crazy Horse if they want to as well?
It's France. Go to the beach.
as well.
As well. You don't need any magazines, and you don't need to trip anywhere specifically. You can just go and get all the biology you need from a trip to the beach. It's absolutely fine. Tyler, what's on the cards for you this weekend and next week?
This coming week, very excited because the September issue should be touching down it's probably on a truck right now from Germany, and will probably land on our desks in the Zurich office tomorrow morning. So looking forward to see the September issue. The September issue has a slight retweak. It has a mobility theme this year, so I think readers will notice it's had sort of a little bit of let's call it a very, very gentle facelift, but it's still, of course, the same monocle that hopefully everybody loves. But yeah, there's a few editorial tweaks to it, so looking forward to that landing. And then, of course, we're just in that month or, weeks away from gearing up for the conference. So Quality of Life Conference, of course, is 4th to 6th in Barcelona. And it's going to be a real number this year. We're very, very excited about the lineup. I love every day just seeing when we sort of get the latest round of ticket sales and just seeing where people are coming from. So right now I can say that Europe is in the lead. UK is doing well. Latika, you've got to spread the word with Australia. It's pitiful. I think there's like one Aussie coming. So we have to improve that. The Americans are doing a very good job. It's remarkable. And I think it was actually interesting picking this date around Labor Day. So I think a lot of people, saw this a couple of months ago. They've extended their holidays. So they're spending, of course, a few extra days to be with us in Barcelona.
Tyler, by the pool, child-free. Thank you so much.
I'm getting behind the steering wheel. It's time to break for the border.
Oh, okay. Well, we're very pleased to thank you for taking the time out this morning. Joining us on the line from Lana. You too. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson, joined around the table by Latika, Bourke and Yossi Mekelberg. Right. Do we want to go straight into our stories, or what's our magazine reading? Because I've shown you the picture of the 1,000,001 women's weeklies that have just been dispatched to me from Tyrol. What's the magazine that you're picking up at the minute, or the book that you're picking up this weekend or for holidays?
Looking at that, the only reason I'm familiar with this German magazine is because my grandmother that emigrated to, it was still Palestine before it became Israel after the war, she couldn't speak Hebrew, she spoke only German. And still she will read throughout her life in Israel, Frau im Spiegel, Bunte. She knew more about the royal family in the UK as a result of it, that she knew anything about Israel, politics or life or society. So that's why I used to see that with her friends in a very bizarre way, completely obsessed with reading magazines from Germany.
That seems like a perfectly wonderful way to live. It really
Probably.
does. And what I love about that is when I saw the picture, which is of a wall of women's weeklies and then 2 copies of Playboy, the women's weeklies all had exactly the same paper. And does that ring any bells with anyone, that the smell of cheap magazine, sort of thin as skin paper that you just know is going to get horribly soggy by the pool, or just it's going to be on the kitchen table or whatever, but there is an unmistakable sort of scent of cheap paper.
Yeah, and it folds over completely, in
a way
that if you have Vogue or something, it doesn't. You've kind of got to tackle it and pat it down at the bind, and these thin ones,
there are literally no spines to crack on that one.
My first job was in a newsagent, and fun fact, when you send the editions back that don't sell, you've got to get a razor and lop the front page, and you actually only just send the front page back. So for my early years in magazine reading, I read magazines without the cover because you get them for free if that was the case.
What and how did that form your educational upbringing?
I read a lot of Vogue, a lot of Harper's Bazaar, and this will not surprise you, Emma. And in Australia, we have a wonderful magazine, Gourmet Traveller, which is basically a bit like Monocle, but based around food and very bougie kind of food. I remember once I made a trifle recipe out of a Gourmet Traveller. It took me 6 to 8 hours.
I've been there with
that's the kind of magazines I used to read. I don't have time for those anymore. Bit like the football.
You're not going out to find some edible flowers to put on your panel.
No football, no magazines.
You're just having a pie and chips at QPR. I know that from not from experience, but from good anecdotes. And apparently the pies where you go for your football are excellent. That's the only reason why I would go. Let's find out talk about some news. I think we can talk about Israel in a moment, because this will take a little while to get through. But there's I wanted to draw your attention to this article in the New York Times, which mentions, it's a front page, and it's a sort of a look ahead to what is going on on Friday, which is this quite astonishing meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. There has been an awful lot of, well, two things have happened in the last 24 hours. We've had Volodymyr Zelensky saying, I need to be at this meeting. This is my country. But secondly, we've had plenty of international voices chiming in now saying, this is not right. Or the international community is supporting Ukraine here. Is this arguably what Donald Trump wants? That he wants to push all the pressure and all the responsibility over onto Europe? Who wants to begin with that one? Because Latika, you've just come back from Ukraine, haven't you?
Yes. I think we are in a bit of a worrying moment because we had a lot of momentum going Ukraine's way in terms of the relationship with the White House. We saw obviously that disastrous Oval Office meeting earlier in the year. Things have been patched up since then. And Trump himself has become extremely frustrated with Vladimir Putin. Now, Putin has sensed this and changed tack, and this is the thrust of this article in the New York Times, beautifully written and very articulately laid out, where it argues correctly that Putin is now coming to the White House saying, actually, I have something to bargain with. It's called territory. And the article makes this great point that he's speaking Donald Trump's language as a real estate man. And so that's why you saw this statement from Zelensky Saturday. It was where he rushes out and says, well, I'm forbidden by my own constitution from actually trading any land, so don't get any ideas. Then you had this flight from security advisors from the EU Commission, from Ukraine, from the US, coming to the UK yesterday, where JD Vance was supposedly holidaying with David Lammy, the UK Foreign Secretary, at Lammy's country house in Kent. And they held what I'm told was around 2 hours meetings, and there were bilaterals before that. And they set out the framework for what they need from Trump. And this is the contest, isn't it? It's Europe and Ukraine are on one side, and there is a huge fear that we don't know where Trump will land. It could land well for Ukraine. We don't know. And in fact, people I've spoken to say they don't know. They don't know where Trump will land because this is the unpredictability of the man. What they are worried about is that Putin knows exactly where he wants to land, which is the thrust of this article again, that he wants to reorder European security through NATO, through EU, which he's had some great success in doing, at chipping away at those institutions, and that Trump is his man to help him.
And that idea that the fact that we don't know where Trump is going to go, because the language from Trump from the last few weeks at least has been, describing him as a wily character, and also, when he says he goes back home to the White House, and Melania says, he's just having just had a great phone call with Vladimir. Melania reminds him that there have been attacks and bombings on Ukraine by Russia. The narrative, Yossi, recently has been more of Trump, or arguably once bitten, twice shy. But the fact remains is that he is on a mission to be a peacemaker, to end wars. And one wonders how much, a desire for the Nobel Peace Prize is going to be something that's going to be a big driver for Donald Trump when he sits down with Vladimir Putin.
Since we know that with Trump is always about Trump, and about his ego and about the Nobel Peace Prize, and we saw the signing of the peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But, anecdotally, it's interesting, we're talking about property. Actually, the meeting is going to take place in Alaska, which is the best property deal ever when the United States purchased it from Russia for I think between $8 and $9 million, which is a real bargain. But looking at any conflicts as a property deal is completely missing what conflicts are all about. And to think that all what you can do is swap land, and is it one-to-one? Probably not, because Putin will never agree there.
That's happened before, hasn't it? They've gone into a room together and no one knows what was said. Yeah,
and the idea that now, also talking about proper, changing land and forgetting there are people living there and no one, because this goes also the idea when it comes to Gaza about building a Riviera, is the idea that people don't matter. If we sit in a room and decide about swapping land, then we'll think what we are going to do with the people. But Putin is playing with Trump. because one is very experienced in this kind of negotiations and in world politics, the other is not very well versed in international affairs, to say it mildly. And what Trump wants is about himself, anything. I'm not going only to get land. I want them not to be part of NATO. I don't want to have Western forces in Ukraine. I don't want them to do anything that I can't later compromise the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Because if we listen to people around Putin, they said that Ukraine is not a legitimate country. So the vision is always that Ukraine is going to be part of Russia.
There are two men here who are actually after the same thing, aren't they, Latika, which is effectively legacy.
Mm-hmm. You've hit upon my point. Legacy, and I think trade, money. And this is what this inherently comes down to. We have two ways of looking at how or why there is a necessity to resolve this conflict. One is to end the bloodshed. Now, Donald Trump repeatedly says he wants to end killing. He just wants to save lives. I actually do think there is a strong part of Donald Trump that is genuine about this. I think deep down he's probably a bit of a peacenik and does see his role for, as long as he sees a role for America, that he can do something like this. But let's put that aside. I think that's one smaller factor. What has the US administration repeatedly said is its motivation for wanting to end this conflict? They want to do trade with Russia. They think there's millions to be made. Donald Trump has said this himself. Then you look under Donald Trump and you look at perhaps what comes after Donald Trump. And I think this is far more the worrying part about the US administration's approach to European security and Russia here. They are not saying Putin is an invader. Putin is someone who must be punished. Putin has stolen children from Ukraine. Putin is targeting energy infrastructure. Putin kills civilians unnecessarily and deliberately. They don't say these things. And so that means their motivation is actually not to stop Russian imperialism. Their motivation is to make some cash. Now, that is a very different set of motivations for stopping a war and what that might result in. And so inside the administration, you have Marco Rubio, I think, with a far more traditional view. Russia is a threat and will continue to be a threat to Euro-Atlantic security. And then you have the MAGA camp, which is, let's make some money with the Russians again. Let's ease these tensions. That, I think, is the fundamental test that will be answered on Friday.
I think to add to this, this is not an administration that the rule of law is top of its priority, let alone international law or human rights. This is administration that is dismantled. Actually, the foreign aid, everything to do with humanitarianism, it's not. I'll make money and I won't spend it anywhere. Of course, it's oversimplistic because there is heavy price to come with that later. But that's the way they look at it. It's all about, again, the art of the deal, and if it works for me, without any complexity, without any deep perception or vision, what is society, what is international society, how they interact with one another, and what are the trade-offs between things. It's straightforward deals. But I think, again, if something like this happens, how Europe's going to respond to that, whether Putin will manage to drive a wedge between Europe and the United States, when, again, it's a delayed price for this, remains to be seen.
You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson, joined around the table by Latika, Bourke, journalist and geopolitics expert, and by Yossi Mekelberg, Senior Consulting Fellow at Chatham House. Let's head now to Singapore. It's, 1634 in Singapore. They're just celebrating the 60th anniversary of the city-state. Independence is what they're celebrating. And joining me now is Monocle Singapore correspondent Joseph Koh. A very good afternoon to you, Joe. How's it looking?
Good morning, Emma. You can depend on the sun in Singapore, and as expected, it's a sweltering day here.
Excellent. So it's your 60th National Day this year. Well, when is the National Day? Is it now? Is it today? And what's it looking like?
It's yesterday, so it was a huge weekend for Singapore, having celebrated its Diamond Jubilee last night with the annual National Day Parade. For context, it's 2 hours of pomp and pageantry with a military vehicle showcase, aerial flypast, and a full-on show with song and dance.
Now, so tell us a little bit about what that looked like. I mean, given the fact that it's the 60th anniversary, was there a ramping up of celebrations? Was it a little bit more than normal? Tell us what it sounded and looked like.
Sure. I believe it was the largest parade ever, with an extension to the Marina Bay beyond the Padang. There was also a mobile column that spanned air, land and sea for the first time. Foreign leaders from the region also attended the parade, including Indonesian President Prabowo, Brunei Sultan Hassan al-Bolkiah and more.
And we had a National Day song being sung. I do believe we actually have a little clip of it. I wonder. Can you just chat us through the musical elements to all this?
Sure. The song titled Here We Are is performed by singer-songwriter Charlie Lim, a cappella group The Island Voices and regional pop star Kit Chan. Singapore has released a new National Day song every year for almost 3 decades now, and Here We Are kicked off last night's show.
Okay, let's have a listen to Here We Are.
Here we are, in this together, spirits forever. Look how far we have come. Here we are.
Well, it's certainly got everybody in the studio in London swaying from side to side. If any of us still smoked, I think cigarette lighters would be out there. That's a wonder, isn't it, Joseph?
Yeah, it is.
Good. Okay, well, there's some other songs as well, aren't there, that we need to talk about. There's another one, there's Home by Kit Chan. This is so much fun. We've got loads of national songs to play. Tell us about Kit Chan's song.
Yeah, so Kit Chan, Home in general is seen as like the most popular National Day song. Kit is now in her 50s, and I think it was a rare opportunity for her where she shared with me where singing Here We Are this year was a passing of the torch moment for her. As Charlie and the Island Voices, they represent a new generation of artists, and so that was quite momentous for her.
Okay, so let's have a little listen to Kit Chan's song Home.
This is home, truly, where I know I must be, where my dreams wait for me, where that river always flows. This is home.
We have actually found cigarette lighters now, and we're sort of in full sway. There's a tone here, isn't there, Joseph? That it's got a sort of that gentle, pure celebration of Singapore.
Yes, it is. Home was focused on, I guess, homesickness. Chan, at that point in time, she was living overseas, and that song spoke about her love for the country, even though she was living away, but she still felt a connection to her homeland.
And that innocence and that joy that's experienced musically just then by absolutely everybody listening. What does it say about where Singapore is today?
I believe the song, National Day songs in general, for a long time, they were propaganda-laced tunes that bore multiple mentions of Singapore. It was all about nation building, right? So the lyrics can be pretty cheesy. Old songs would go like, "Count on me, Singapore, count on me to give the best and more." Thankfully, the country has come into its own over the years. It has moved away from these on-the-nose tunes and given artists more latitude to express their own feelings about the nation.
And when people are able to express their own feelings about the nation, what are they actually saying? Is by the sound of the last two songs, it's a pretty rosy picture that is being painted by the music. Are there different fresh narratives coming in which might be, ask more questions?
Yeah. Here We Are, for example, the one lyric that stood out to me was "Our differences will make us whole," which one again speaks about appreciating Singapore's multicultural and diverse makeup. When I was speaking with Charlie, he shared that with the song, he tried to capture the zeitgeist of where the nation is amid the tensions and heartbreak in the world, while still balancing a sense of pride, of course.
And indeed, does any on these national days, when obviously everything is all about celebration, but at what point does space emerge for debate or questions to be raised about not just what Singapore has achieved in its 60 years of independence, but where it needs to go next to actually improve?
Yeah. Singapore's Prime Minister Lawrence Wong was pretty circumspect in his National Day message 2 days ago. He said that the country now stands at a fork in the road, as the world is today more contested, fragmented, and volatile than before. He openly expressed that it's difficult for small states like Singapore to hold its own now than ever. And the only way this open country can thrive is a strong social compact.
Indeed. And what does that social contract mean, given the fact that, if you live in Singapore, you've got problems with the cost of living. Then you've got, if you're a small business and you run a restaurant, then it's getting more and more expensive to survive. Tell us a little bit more about these fragmented areas that the Singaporean Prime Minister was talking about.
Yeah, cost of living is definitely high up on the list, right? And we're not talking about cars alone. Public housing flats, for example, have exceeded $1 million, which is approximately £578,000. Many high-profile restaurants, including Michelin-starred ones, have been closing down of late. Independent businesses, they grapple with high rental prices. And so just with this week, the government announced a new economic resilience task force, which seeks to review its economic strategy, of course, due to Trump's tariffs and the recent geopolitical tensions.
And finally, we've got 60 years of independence and National Day being celebrated, including those marvellous, splendid tunes. Where is National Day going to go in the next 10 years, as 10, 20, 30 years, even 60 years, as Singapore has to recognise or does recognise that things change and challenges are there?
Yeah, I hope it can be as honest as possible in terms of looking at where it is today and not only just, talking about its success, right? But it can really hold space for more Singaporeans. I think yesterday during the National Day parade, a plumber, for example, spoke about success meaning different things to different people. So I really hope that the show can continue to feature people from all races, including performers and artists with, for example, disabilities and more.
Joseph Koh in Singapore, many thanks for joining us on the line from Singapore this afternoon. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Joining me around the table, we have Latika, Bourke, journalist and geopolitics expert, and Yossi Mekelberg, senior consultant and fellow at Chatham House. And Yossi, I think we do have to dive straight in with you, don't we, about what happened in Israel this week, that this decision to... help us with the wording here, because the Israelis are very, very careful not to use the word occupation in Gaza. But to all intents and purposes, this is effectively what is going to happen.
Yes, they use the word, they're going to take over Gaza. And when we thought it can't get any worse, it does get much, much worse. And between now and symbolically 7th of October, 2025, Israel is planned to take over the entire territory, which is an occupation. And the stick boy is including entering into Gaza City, which means urban war in highly populated, very densely populated area. Now, we know that the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, the Chief of Staff, was arguing all night between Thursday until the announcement on Friday morning against it. We know that the Israeli people are against it because for many, many months they put premium on releasing the hostages, ending the war. So Israel is basically, through a democratic process, because Netanyahu and the people that serve the coalition were elected democratically, but the country was taken over by a cynical, detached and delusional prime minister that does it because he is involved in corruption trial and wants to survive politically, and a group of messianic religious ultra-nationalists that in their dream, it's not just taking over, it's occupation, it's annexation, it's the expulsion of people of Gaza, the Palestinians there, and rebuilding the settlement, that tomorrow it's exactly 20 years since Israel withdrew from Gaza. So now, if you want really to push your optimism to the very extreme, to the very end, you'll say that it is part of the bargaining chip with Hamas, and Hamas will get so scared and will decide to to agree to all the terms and conditions that Israel put together with the United States for a ceasefire agreement. I doubt it. I think then you can take a view that Netanyahu needs to prolong the war as long as possible. Elections are not due until October of next year. He might call fresh election, but he just prolongs it as long as possible while he's supposed, after the summer, to continue the cross-examination in his corruption trial. Or he's so delusional that he really thinks that he can enter into Gaza, eliminate Hamas, and also tell again and again people that this is going to bring to the release of the hostages, that actually the head of the IDF said, you can almost say goodbye to the hostages if this is going to happen.
Just explain a little bit to us the level of support for this in Israel itself. I mean, we'll move on to the reaction from the international community in a moment. But you mentioned the point that this government was elected and that we have seen, despite the fact that we have seen, protests across Israel in the last 24 hours, many of the voices coming from the families of the hostages who they believe will be lost now forever. What level of support is there in Israel for this? Because someone was mentioning this as sort of 20% to 80% level of support and dissent, a completely, a figure that we have no backing to sort of justify or have any evidence to this one. But there will be voices in Israel who believe that this is a good thing.
Yes, but there are fewer and fewer, and continuously 70% of Israel in polls says we would like to see the hostages home, and whatever the cost of it in terms of releasing Palestinian prisoners and ending the war. But then tens of thousands were demonstrating last night in different places. Earlier this week, 600 former senior IDF, Mossad, Shabak, internal security, signed a letter, said that there is no more military objective that can be achieved in Gaza. Go for a diplomatic solution. That's what the chief of staff is saying. Then you have reservists that served already 400 days, up to 400 days in 22 months. It's basically they spend most of their time away from families, from their businesses, from their studies, and there is fatigue. And there is another element. If you enter, as it is, Israel is facing the ICJ. It faces two people facing arrest warrant in the ICC. If you enter into a war inside Gaza, there is also a fear of potentially war crimes committed on a large scale. So, however you look at it, there is opposition to this within Israel, even as you say before actually we are addressing the international community, because we see a real shift in countries that we never expected to criticize Israel.
Well, you see though in the last few weeks we've seen when it became apparent that there were children who were starving to death because of the absence of sufficient aid, or indeed the attempts to get aid could actually end up in your death. The fact that there were people being shot at trying to get basic supplies. You then had Latika, Britain, France, Germany all took a tougher stance, did nothing.
Well, Germany actually ceased exports. So I think this is where it's starting to get a bit more real. We've obviously had the recognition of a Palestinian state for whatever that is and how effective or counterproductive that might be. But there are, I think, some serious signals now that there is a cleavage between Israel, her traditional allies, and the US. And this is, I think, a very long-term structural problem for Israel. I wrote a piece earlier this week, which Yossi kindly contributed to for The Nightly, my paper, arguing exactly this, that I think Israel is now at risk of losing the next generation and possibly the generation after its support. And as Yossi pointed out so articulately in that piece, this is a generation that will, for it, interpret the region through these images of Gaza, not the Holocaust. And that's a big change. Our generation, of course, has interpreted the Middle East, I think, largely through the paradigm of the Holocaust. This is changing, and this is Netanyahu's own fault. And if you compare two wartime leaders at the moment, Volodymyr Zelensky tried to do something that would nix the independence of internal corruption bodies. There was a fierce protest on the streets. There was a fierce reaction from his European allies, and he changed course within 24 hours. By a week later, he had changed and reversed that law. Look at what Netanyahu does in the face of the same opposition. He gaslights everybody. He tells them they're all making things up. They're falling for Hamas propaganda. They're so dumb they obviously can't understand what they see in front of them isn't truth and fact. He has the support of Donald Trump, but after that, I'm not sure how sustainable Israel's support around the world is actually anymore.
Would you agree with that, Yossi, or would you suggest that actually that the world is very good at forgetting the things that countries have done that appall humankind, and we're looking at a situation now which arguably is reaching such a point that there are no words to describe what is going on, not least because the international media cannot get into Gaza to find out what's going on. But the reports that are coming out suggest catastrophe at an unimaginable scale. Yeah, you just mentioned all the ICC and the fact that there are arrest warrants out for Benjamin Netanyahu. We mentioned the international community rallying together. But is there this sense that there will be a generational shift, or will people just move on?
Yeah, and the way that Latika put it, you can't put it any better. It's for this generation, those are the images. Every generation has the images that influence, whether it's Vietnam or the Holocaust. For some, it's the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, and now for this generation is the starvation. And again, I told you this before. For me, that the Jewish state, whatever the war against Hamas, with the history of the Jewish people, and I'm second generation, to allow this to happen, it shows the terrible journey, the terrible path that Netanyahu is taking this country. Fighting Hamas is one thing, defending Israel is another thing. It's all good. Leading to preventing from March, no trucks, no lorries entering into Gaza. And again, more than 1,300 people were killed queuing for food. People are hit by airdrops or drowning when they swim to pick a humanitarian aid. On what, when you think about the founding fathers of Israel, the people that came from really background that is diametrically opposite of this attitude, it just showed where Israel slided under Netanyahu.
Where, therefore, what you mentioned there is, the journey of the people who ended up founding the Israeli state is of unspeakable horror. Yeah. And yet we have a new generation here which is actually creating absolutely unspeakable horror in a different way. How did Israel get there? Because there is absolutely no doubt that Israel deserved and got everybody's unconditional support in its desire to find a safe place. And yet the pictures that are coming out now, any other nation, one would wonder what on earth is going on.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing, what happened in the Holocaust and what happened in Gaza. Things can be horrible, terrible, without making, the equate between the two. But I think there is a responsibility that the Jewish state will never be tainted anything of this kind because of our history. But yes, this is the kind, and Latika mentioned it, is the kind of the gaslight. Everyone, you recognize a Palestinian state, you reward jihadism. Now, it's completely not the case, because I'll ask you, and I wrote it in an article, had the international community, as it should have, before 7 of October 2023, recognized the Palestinian state, what do you think Netanyahu would have said? Exactly the same, regardless of what happened there. So it's became also, we talk about Trump is all about him, it's also became with Netanyahu all about him, and much of Netanyahu formed this government with the most extreme. And by the way, they are not even afraid to say, Smotrich says, my only problem with the plan is that you still allow humanitarian aid. This is how low these people can go.
Latika, what are your thoughts on that?
The other observation I would make is that a lot of people who I've traditionally identified as staunch Israel supporters and defenders are now either not saying so much or they're just silent. They're not necessarily criticising Israel or the Israeli people or Netanyahu himself, but they are just not saying much at all. And I think sometimes you look for the silence, and if you look very closely, you'll see there's a growing silence in this area.
You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson, Latika, Bourke and Yossi Mekelberg around the table. We've got 3 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, to do an amazing change in tone, because we want to leave people on a happier note, if at all possible. And you wanted to talk about the citizens of Seoul in South Korea who deserve to be made a little happier, and they're doing it through shopping.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, especially in big city, the issue of loneliness, of being kind of completely atomized in a city. And in South Korea, someone came with the idea of having what they call warm-hearted convenience store.
Right.
In which is basically you go and it's lovely. It's lovely
at the cash desk.
Yes, and you can get free soup when you enter there, and you discover, and we know, especially in big city, as the traditional family and communities in many advanced capitalist society a bit kind of faded away, and we don't live close to, our family. You find yourself in big city, or your children live, and you get old, and you look for a place just to speak to someone, just to have, soup or coffee, and they just opened these 4 shops, and they opened it in March. They expected not more than 5,000 people to, and they already have 20,000.
All who are now getting great friends, and it's all solving the problem of loneliness.
And they can talk about it, and it's part of their mental health.
Latika, is this something that the human race has been doing forever, which is creating community and letting people go and talk to each other? And when you start to formalise it, what effect does that have, I wonder?
I think it's a big problem in cities particularly. I mean, yesterday I was walking along Waterloo and got absolutely shoulder barged, which is something that really only happens in London.
Yep, I got that done in Liverpool Street, and it's inexplicable. Just explain it. You're walking along the street, and someone just suddenly whacks you in the shoulder.
And I've got to say, it's always men. And, well, for me, it's always men. Maybe it's a thing. They whack me in the shoulder, and I turn around and wait for I'm sorry, the apology, which would happen if you're in Taiwan. It would certainly happen if you're in Kyiv. I mean, it wouldn't even happen in the first place. But if somebody accidentally were to do that, they would turn around and apologise. It would certainly happen in Australia. And they just don't. And I do think the lack of community in big cities is part of this deepening antisocial behaviour that you see. It is a problem. I'm not sure forced community is the answer.
Do you think the man that shoulder barged you, or indeed the woman that shoulder barged me in the railway station a couple of weeks ago, do you think a sort of a nice bowl of soup and a chat in the local shop might help?
Well, sometimes maybe that's what they're missing in their lives, yes, to know that what they're doing is deeply antisocial.
Indeed. But people don't want to. Do people have lost their ability to be social nowadays, Yossi? Should we all be sort of getting together around the pool in Lana in Tyrol and just having a chat?
I even think what we are doing here, most of the media now, most of my interviews are on Zoom.
Yeah.
Here we are, I think we make a point to being in the studio and having a conversation and look at each other and see our expression when we say we are happy, we are sad, we are contemplating, and it makes, I think, also from a broadcasting point of view, a completely different experience. We are still human beings. We are not an AI. We spoke the other day about the MP that has an AI alternative of this MP that you can talk to him 24/7. I don't think that's where human beings want to be. You mentioned also just now the social contract, and it reminded me that what Thomas Hobbes said about the state of nature, that it's solitary, poor, nasty, brutish and short. And I think that's where we enter into communities in order to improve it. And
which we hope it's not solitary and nasty.
I mean, Emma, Yossi brings Hobbes to the table on a Sunday morning.
I know.
I leave defeated.
Okay, that's it. We're going to give up. It is literally the end of the programme. So the warmest of thanks. We tried to save humanity at least in the last 2 minutes. The warmest of thanks to all my guests, Latika Bourke, Yossi Mekelberg, Joseph Coe and Tyler Brûlé. Thanks to the producer, Desiree Bandley, Mariella Bevan and myself as well. Our studio engineer was Mariella Bevan. I'm Emma Nelson. Monocle on Sundays, back next week. Goodbye. Thanks for listening.